Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. Welcome to the Clutter Fairy Weekly for October 27th, 2020. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is our weekly webcast and podcast where we talk about all things organized. And today we have developed a topic that is in direct response to some comments, a very lively comment discussion that our viewers had on one of our previous episodes. So as always, we appreciate that you make all those comments because they drive our commentary and discussion.
If you're joining us in the Zoom meeting for the first time, you can share your comments and questions via the chat, and I'll try to make sure Gayle addresses them before we move on to another topic. We're streaming the webcast live on Facebook. You can also share your questions and suggestions and comments on Facebook, and I'll relay them to Gayle. And during the live webcast every Tuesday, you can talk to us directly by calling 669-900-6833. Use meeting ID 993-419-863 and password clutter, all lowercase, to join the meeting. In our September 8th episode about the role of emotions in our relationship with stuff, we talked about using feelings of generosity as a motivation for letting things go. That topic sparked a very lively conversation in YouTube comments with a lot of viewers offering strong opinions one way or the other about what it means when we give something away or when we decide to hold on to things. At the heart of the most passionate responses on that thread was the notion of value. The value that we assign or attribute to our stuff is a strong driver in our decision making as we work to clear clutter. So we want to dig into questions about value over the next few episodes. Feeling sentimental about our stuff is a big reason that many of us keep more than we can manage. So we're going to kick off the series today by exploring sentimental value.
Yes, we are. If we could see our stuff through a stranger's eyes, we might see a lot of things that have lost any practical or monetary value, but it's easy to look at our own collections through the filters of memory and nostalgia, and to rationalize our attachments until our spaces are full to overflowing with the physical reminders of our past. YouTube viewer Janice shared this comment with us recently. I'm very organized with my home, car, and monthly payments. I was a nurse for 25 years, and then I retired with a back injury. The only items I've saved from my love of nursing was my nursing pen, a ring, a yearbook, and my old paper nursing license. They don't take up much room, but why do I keep my paper license when I will never go back to work and the license has been expired for years? This is a perfect example of what we mean when we talk about sentimental clutter, and I'll talk a little bit later about the answer that I gave to Janice. But first, I want to share another example of sentimental clutter from my own experience. One of the categories of discarded items that I often collect from clients for donation is eyeglasses. I typically carry away a pair or two at a time, and when the pile gets big enough, I process the suitable glasses with intact frames and lenses for donation. So I order a shipping label from the VSP Eyes of Hope program and fill up a box and send the glasses off via UPS to be distributed to people around the world who might otherwise not have access to vision correction. And a few years ago, I decided that while I was handling the donations, I'd go through my own collection of eyewear to see what I might add to the box. The stash surprised me. I had been saving my glasses since I was a teenager, so I had 9 pairs spanning about 40 years. I found myself feeling very sentimental about that lifetime of glasses laid out on the tile floor. I've had glasses sitting on my face for all of the waking hours of the last 45 years, now 50 years. When you need them to function, glasses start to feel like a part of your head. So what surprised me the most about the collection was how attached to them I still felt. Those glasses had literally seen my whole life take place, so they exerted a very strong sentimental pull on me. I contemplated what to do. Should I keep them all? I wasn't wearing them and I wouldn't wear them again. The prescriptions weren't strong enough anymore, and some of the styles were hideous by more recent standards. Evidence the bug glasses right there. Oh, I had a current pair that I loved, so my practical need was covered. That meant I was only keeping them for the sentiment that I'd attached to them, and they were each keepsakes to other times in my life. In a nutshell, this is the issue we must face with all of our keepsakes. How much room do we have to store sentiment in our spaces? First of all, let me say the answer to that question will be different for every person and every item and every house. You have to navigate this process according to your personality and your items and your home. We all want keepsakes in our lives. They're valued trail markers along the way. The question is how many are really adding to your quality of life, and when does hanging on to too many keepsakes start to detract from your quality of life? So let's talk about personality as a filter for keepsakes first. Are you super sentimental about everything in your life? You might be prone to sentimentality if any of these behaviors sound familiar. You can keep the ticket from every movie you've ever seen or every performance you've ever attended. Sometimes the ticket is a playbill instead. You keep everything with your mother or your father's handwriting on it. You keep any piece of paper your child ever scribbled on. That's a mom thing. You keep clothes you wore in high school and when you're nearing retirement. You keep all the photos you've ever snapped, even the blurry ones. You keep every Christmas or birthday card you've ever received. You keep the inventory of a long closed business in storage somewhere. You get the idea. If this tendency is part of your personality, then you're keeping a lot of keepsakes in your living space. If you're over 30-ish, you're probably crowding out your current life with memories of your past life, and it's becoming a problem for you. When the keepsakes outweigh the current use items, it starts to get difficult to keep the past and the present separate and to lay your hands on the current stuff when you need it. The metaphorical and literal weight of the past starts to impact your quality of life in a negative way. So while keeping memories is supposed to make you feel good, they actually start to take away peace of mind in the present. Now let's talk about the items themselves. How many or how much you keep depends in part on the materials we're talking about. So storing lots of photos and cards is easier than storing 30 years of clothing. A collection of motorcycles takes up more room than a collection of teacups. When you're looking at sentimental items, size matters. So the larger or bulkier the item, the faster they'll clog up your living space. You may need to filter more of the larger items and fewer of the smaller items as you decide what keepsakes get to stay. Finally, let's talk about your space. Do you live in an assisted living, one-bedroom apartment with 250 square feet? Or do you live in a 4-bedroom, 2-story house of 3,000 square feet? What fits in 3,000 square feet house cannot be squeezed into a 250 square foot apartment. What starts out in 1,600 square feet won't move into a 1,000 square foot home either. It doesn't have to be a huge adjustment to still not fit when you're downsizing. Your space has a cubic volume in which to fit your belongings, both keepsakes and the stuff that you're currently using. The smaller the space, the less room there is to surrender to the past. What you could get away with keeping in 3,000 square feet will not fly in a home that's half that size. So you following this logic? Your personality, your items, and the limitations of your space set the parameters according to which you have to filter your keepsakes. If you start with the premises that A, you want to be able to live comfortably and function easily in your space, you need to be able to find all your current use items effortlessly, and you must be able to clean and maintain your space with ease, then it's clear that you need to allocate most of your space for your current life. You can only set aside a smaller portion of your home for storing and displaying keepsakes. What will that look like in reality? If you're super sentimental and you live in 250 square feet, you're in for a painful purge. If you're downsizing your space by 40%, your purge project will be a little less brutal, but it will still be significant. If you've been overwhelmed with sentimental items in your current space, you've got 2 adjustments to make. You have to dial back the keepsakes to a level that means they stop interfering with how you function in your current life. And that means deciding first what portion of your space is okay to store keepsakes in. And then second, you need to filter the keepsakes until they fit into that portion of your house. I know this may sound like an impossibly practical approach to a very sentimental situation, but if you want to maintain a balance in your house between the space you're using and the memories you're storing, this is the challenge you have to face. You don't have to change your personality. You can still be sentimental. You just have to set some parameters for sentimental things so they don't take over your life. I'm going to leave you with some tips to help you make decisions about what to keep and what to let go of. Hopefully these will make it easier for you as you rebalance the amount of keepsakes that you store. The first one is a technique that we mention often that works especially well for large or bulky items, and that is taking a picture. Sometimes a photograph of the item is enough to let the real items go. A picture of the kids' large poster board project, or of the popsicle stick diorama, or of your favorite coat from high school will suffice. Or the dining room table from your grandmother's house that's too large for anybody's house now, and you know you're going to have to give it away to someone, you're going to have to donate it out. But you can still take a picture of it so that everybody can remember grandma's table. I'm also remembering, as I'm telling this, the client whose son's junior high school trifold 4 feet tall diorama thing
Or
was
science fair.
science fair or something. You know, they made some big poster board, and you know, and of course the son was in his 40s, and this diorama was behind a door in the office, and it's like, really, like, he's not going to want that thing. It's huge. It served its purpose in the moment, and he spent a bunch of time on it, and so it feels really valuable because of the time he invested. But its purpose has now been realized. It was realized the day he came home from school after he presented it, and so having it, 35 years later, is not serving anybody in any way. And that's a perfect example of, we opened it up, we took a picture of the diorama, we took it from a couple of angles, we took some close-ups on some really, because there was 3 different boards basically, and so we took some close-ups of each segment, and she was satisfied with that, and we were able to, let that go off into the ether. I think that because it was still a workable trifold, that I took it off to the art asylum. But that's the idea, that if it's super large and it's a throwback from a previous time, better to take a picture, or it's very 3D, like you made a model, you made a mock-up, you made a volcano. There's all kinds of things like that. And so going through that process and taking a picture of those bulky things makes it easy to remember and laugh about and talk about. Wasn't it so much fun when we made the volcano? And you don't have to live with the actual volcano.
Well, and the bigger it is, the more likely it is to be suffering the ravages of time and getting moved around.
Time and movement and storage and banging and tripping and all of that, exactly. And a lot of times the 3D things that I find, they were, it was the elementary school project, and in order to work with little kids, it was like the flour and water project that is now 20 years old and bug eaten and crumbling and falling apart, because it was a material that was designed for ease of use and non-toxicity with children, and it was not designed as a material that would survive for the next 2 decades. So there is some stuff that is no longer safe to be present, and it is attracting bugs, and you need to let it go. So taking a picture solves a whole plethora of problems related to storage and safety, and you still get to have the memory. The next suggestion is to try to keep a representative sample of each sentimental category. So you have all kinds of things with your mother's handwriting on it, for instance, from grocery lists to birthday cards, but the birthday cards are a better representative sample of your mother and your relationship with her than those grocery lists. So keep the ones that are richer in feeling for you and filter out the rest. In general, keep the best example of anything sentimental and filter out their lower quality choices. I had this experience myself when I was going through, after my mother had passed away. Then I had birthday cards from her and Christmas cards from her, and where she had written, and she liked to write a paragraph or 2 in there. And so for me, those are really rich representation to me of our relationship. And then there were other things that came from her house, like I did actually find a grocery list in her handwriting, and here was, some notes that she was taking about paying a bill. And in comparison, those cards from her were much more valuable to me personally than the grocery list. And so I was able to say, I have wonderful examples of her handwriting, and I have her, love you, mom, written on things. I don't need milk, butter, eggs list, right? I can let that go. And I think that if you haven't filtered any, you will see things that have your relative's handwriting on it, and you will go, oh, look, that's somebody's handwriting, and then you'll want to keep it just because of that. So I think it's a category to consider, that you pull all those handwriting samples together that are making you feel tugged upon and attached, and that you filter out, you find the best examples and filter out the lower quality pieces. So this is where I circle back to Janice. Janice's nursing license and the few related keepsakes that she kept from her nursing career are a perfect example of this approach. The license represents all of the hard work that Janice put into becoming a nurse, and it serves as a great reminder of her career of service without taking up a lot of space. So she was wondering why she kept the license, because it was never going to be valid again. But I immediately said to her, yeah, but it's a perfect keepsake of your career and all the work, the effort that you made to become a nurse and get qualified as a nurse, and it memorializes your years of service as a nurse too. And it does it in one piece of paper. And so it was a perfect keepsake, and it was something that if it was really important to her, she could frame it to show it and be able to look at it, or it could be in a scrapbook, or it could be in a file of keepsakes that she had. It's just a perfect example of keep a sample, not the whole career. And she had, she said she had a 20-year career or whatever, and so she was doing it for a long time, and she ended up with 5 things. And those 5 things were enough to represent her service in life and that season of her life that was now complete. And I thought it was a great example of filtering out a representative sample of her experience. And the strategy of keeping a representative sample can be adapted as a proactive strategy for filtering on the front end as well. I know it's easier to keep all instead of making any choices, but not making the choices is why you're drowning in stuff now. So you can instead choose to filter as you experience things instead of choosing after the pile is huge. When you come home from that vacation, for example, and you're unpacking, filter out the flyers and schedules and tickets and handouts right now. There's a lot of that paper that's now waste, and a few pieces will serve as a reminder of the great adventure you have. If you're an extensive planner, you probably took a bunch of paper with you on the trip with research places that you wanted to go and itineraries and suggestions and things. Here's the travel book and all of the paper that you took to prepare for the trip, and then you stop and pick up paper everywhere that you go, and here's a card from the restaurant, and here's the subway schedule, and all of the things that you use to navigate throughout your vacation. And then you just sort of throw all that in the luggage and bring it home. And then when you're unpacking, you take that whole wad of paper and you stick it in a bag and you go shove it on a shelf somewhere and forget about it. And the truth is, this could be part of your decompressing from an adventure, that you take out all the paper and you look at it and you go, yeah, I probably don't need the 37 iterations of our itinerary. I can probably keep one. And I don't need all of these little business cards from all of the places that we stopped, or we got recommended to do this, but we didn't actually do it, and I can let that go away. You can filter that stuff after your trip so that all of the pieces that you sort of without thought threw into the pile, if you cut it in half, if you cut it to a quarter, you're already doing some of your filter work and reducing the burden on yourself in the future. So it's worth the effort to try to shift that behavior and do the filtering as you complete an experience instead of 2 decades later. The last tip for today is take your favorite parts of a collection and display them. So your favorite picture of your childhood home would be great hung on the wall, and you're honoring the keepsake that way. Then you don't have to keep so many photos of the house because the best one is out for you to look at and enjoy all the time. You can even frame or put in a shadow box some more 3D objects for display. I've seen lots of framed baby gowns and ticket collages out there. It is a decorator's adaptation to, I want to keep this sentimental thing, and so the decorator makes it into art to hang on the wall. And while that won't work for a volcano, it does work for a little baby dress, or it works for the tickets and a few little keychains and things that you kept from the New York trip. Or I saw somebody did a collage with all the playbills for all the plays that they had been to, and they made that all into a collage. And so you can take some things that are a little not super 3D, but have a little bit more than a paper's width to them, and put them into a shadow box to look at. And then you have an actual collection on the wall that you're looking at, and it makes it artwork, and it makes it visible all the time. And so, as Peter Walsh has said a million times, then you're honoring the sentimentality, and you're honoring the memory and not ignoring it. And that way, it makes it worth having it on the wall. So what did I do with my glasses? I kept my current pair, obviously, and here's my current pair, da, 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 da. And I put back the most recent previous pair so I'd have a backup if I were to break or lose the ones I'm wearing. I can't drive without glasses, so I need to keep something in reserve in case I need to replace a broken pair. But I took a picture of all of them laid out, which is what this picture is right here, so I could remember the collection and laugh about them. And then I put them in the donation box, even though it was hard to say goodbye. And I did have that moment of, oh God, my glasses are leaving. And I talked myself into it, and I boxed them up and sent them away. And I have to say, I have not missed them. And I can still look at these glasses and laugh about them. And the styles are hilarious. And these bug-eye glasses are a much, much younger version of me. And these are the more recent ones over here. And, it's the history of how my eyeballs evolved over time. And it only matters to me. It doesn't matter to anybody else. But I am enjoying looking at the picture. And so it was a way for me to adapt and still take my own advice and let the glasses go and not have the collection sitting around.
Lise says, I believe I had 4 of the same pairs.
Right? Oh, goodness.
Okay, we have lots of comments. Karen said, my mother once gave me a real gift when we discussed the things my parents gave me in the past. She asked me, did it give you joy when we gave it to you? If the answer is yes, it served its purpose.
Oh, well, that's nice.
And she said, I had been feeling guilt when thinking of donating those things. Now that's getting into a topic we're going to dig into later
yes.
in 2 or 3 weeks, which is what is your responsibility when someone gives you a gift? There was a really heated discussion in the YouTube comments. Karen also said, my wise mother also said when they moved from a large house to a high-rise, would I miss this if there was a fire? Often when I go through things I remember but wouldn't have missed if I hadn't seen it. Still hard for me though. And Abby suggested with good cards, greeting cards, I've switched to using them as bookmarks. And that's a terrific suggestion.
Especially if you're using if you're reading paper books a lot, that's a good idea. I did remember the example that Penny made me think of. She came with me on a job one time, and it was a young woman who was in residency, I think, as a doctor, and we were unpacking, and she had a bunch of it was like really thick glassware that the parents had given her, and she's like, I don't really like them, and I have other stuff that I like, but I feel bad. And Penny was like, so your parents gave you their clutter because they didn't want it anymore, and you feel guilty about passing it along? It's like, that is a perfect way to think about it. Like, they just were making use of the fact that you needed some stuff, and they passed it along. And so Yeah, sometimes you have to remember that the reason that you have it is so that your parents don't have to make a decision about how to get rid of it. You are the easier way to declutter. And so you can probably then send it on and it won't bother them too much.
Deborah said, if everything is precious, nothing is precious, which I think is terrific. You really do sort of devalue each thing if you have so many things that you can't effectively store or display or appreciate
Or
a
filter
whole bunch of
through.
stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
also, I think by isolating the most precious, you sort of intensify the emotional weight that that one thing carries.
Yeah.
When our dear friend Jorge died, the only thing I wanted was his copy of the Chronicles of Narnia in Spanish, and
Aw.
his cousin saved that for me because I introduced it to him and he enjoyed reading it, and it's one of my favorite sets of books. And so just
And you
looking
had
at
an
it,
association with it.
yeah, and looking at it reminds me of him, reminds me of the conversations we had about it, and so it's the perfect keepsake and takes up 1 inch of shelf space.
Right? One little bit on the shelf. Exactly. That's a great keepsake for him. He was a big reader.
Yeah. Kathleen said, clothes seem to be challenging for me to let go of. It's a high sentimental value to me. Makes no sense to me, but hard to let go.
But there it is, right? And I think this is a girl thing too. There's some amount of this is a girl thing about clothes because we get conditioned to value how we look so much more than men. And we're, especially as young people, we are trying so hard all the time to look good, to look beautiful, to be pretty, to be special, and it's this whole experience of I'm putting on the clothing in order to look hip, to look fab, to look trendy, to look cool to my friends. And we get conditioned to clothes make us better somehow as young people. And then we hold on to that. And of course, the people that make clothes work very hard to keep you thinking that way. And so it makes it hard to let go of this is when I was, when I was 17 or when I was 22 or when I was 28, this is when I was the most cool. And all of the things that I had were the times when I felt like I looked the best and I felt the best and I was having the most fun, or, whatever you associate with that time period. And so as you're looking at those clothes, you're also going, oh yes, I was thin then, I was flexible then, I was single then. I was going out more, I had more adventures happening. You hadn't settled fully into your adult life yet. And so there's some attachment that gets associated through the clothes to that time period of your life. And if clothes are something that you find to be interesting, and then you get into the whole shopping things, like we have this whole, there's a whole industry around shopping and buying clothes, and it's, if you like to do that and it's entertainment for you, then you just keep growing the collection forever. And yeah, it's super easy. They made it super easy to constantly be buying new clothes. They made the prices low. They changed the seasons, and then they convince you that last season's clothes are worthless and you have to have this season's clothes. And so there's a constant pressure to be buying and updating and getting new. And that translates to a closet full of stuff and feeling attached to it all. And so the people that adapt to, yes, last season's clothes are crap and this season's clothes are important, are able to filter them out as the seasons change. Like they let go of last year's stuff because they only want to be wearing this year's cool stuff. But most of us put money into it, and then we don't buy the whole, it was 6 months ago, it was hot, 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 and 6 months later, it's not worth anything. And so we have a hard time letting go. And so I hear your dilemma is what I'm saying. And this is a place where you can benefit from pulling out all of the things that are similar and picking a representative sample. So you may not be able to filter all this stuff out, but you may be able to filter part of it out. If you're really stuck on clothes, then you want to try to filter some amount in little pieces, right? You want to take some bites off of it. Sometimes the best you can do is peel 10% off. You peel the onion, and it means you're going to have to return to your clothes over and over again. You're not going to be able to filter the whole collection all at once, which is sort of like ripping the Band-Aid off. But if you are stalling on doing anything because of the volume, then I would just aim for picking one. Like try to take 10% off. Go pull all the black pants out and try to filter some of that off and aim for getting rid of 25% or 10% or 3 of the 10 pairs, or set yourself some kind of parameter where you can thin the herd. And just know that you may still not thin out the closet as much as you are dreaming, and you may have to go back and do another round. But if you have to do it in stages like that, it's just another way to get to the same destination, and it'll be okay. You can still filter it out in stages and eventually get there. There is my discussion on clothing.
Okay, I want to share a great comment from Bonnie. She said, my mother-in-law passed away 2 years ago, father-in-law 2 months ago. We removed personal items that we wanted and then packed 1 box of sentimental items for each of our daughters who live on the other side of the country. That left us with decor, furniture, tools, kitchenware, etc. Although that house held so many memories, my husband and I felt that upon our last visit on the weekend of Dad's funeral, that the house became a structure full of furniture and wall decor and not their physical presence. We called an estate dealer who has agreed to remove all the items prior to the sale of the house, and we will essentially break even. We were able to take photos of fabric and wallpaper patterns, etc., and had them made into refrigerator magnets, which we now have as a functional memory. We really feel at peace with our decision, for this house, in their absence, has become a structure filled with stuff, and not the loving home we enjoyed when they were alive.
Yeah, exactly. And I had the same experience about my mother's house, and what I did was, the weekend of her funeral, I walked around and took pictures of the house as it existed, because I knew we were getting ready to dismantle it all. And I wanted to be able to remember, this is what the living room looked like, and this is what the bedroom looked like. And, having a few photos of her house helped me dismantle, basically. And it is a practical project of, this is not enough, right? Like, this is just stuff. This is not them. And then you have this project, which is dismantle their accumulation. And it's a practical project that is drowned in a bunch of sentimental and feelings of loss and grief. And so sometimes it's hard to separate the project itself from how you're feeling in the moment, which is why it's so difficult for everybody to dismantle their parents' house. But I think, you did a great job of figuring out, we pulled some stuff out, we made some magnets, we kept some things, and we passed the rest on. And you're right, it was a good solution.
Karen asked, and this is on the subject of arranging collections, do you know someone who will put a collection together for you? I plan to do that for a couple of things, i.e. trip to New York City with my daughter, but never find the time. I think, depending on what you've got, sometimes a framing shop will take your things and put them in suitable mats and cutouts and things like that in a frame.
Right. And also, I had a friend who, it was something that the interior decorator did, along with all the things that they were doing in the house, that she made several framed collection things to put on the wall as a way to incorporate the objects into the decoration of the house. And so you might be able to find a decorator who does that kind of stuff, and you might ask some kind of an artist as well. So I don't think that there's not somebody that particularly does that and only does that for a living, but there are people that it is part of what they would do along with other things. And so interior designers come to the top of the list for me, and anybody that does framing is going to do some amount of arranging, and maybe between together as a team, you can figure out, if you went to Michael's, for instance, frame department, you could figure out how to lay it out as a group and put it together that way. Just depends on how much money you want to spend on making it into art. And you can also call one of your crafty friends and say, hey, would you help me put this together? And y'all can do it as a fun thing together.
A couple more comments on clothes. Lorraine said, I am real picky about my clothes, and styles come and go. I don't care if they're in style. I've outgrown them, but I'm constantly losing weight and putting it back on, so I have them for the influx. But I have too many. And
don't we all?
Wolf on Facebook added, clothing is part of your identity.
Yes, it is. Isn't that amazing? It's so true. I heard a very funny comedy sketch, basically a one-man show, talking about men in particular. They always wear the style of clothing when they were at their height, what they consider to be their most successful time in their life. And so they wear that style of clothing until they die. Like, they get to that particular style and then they stop evolving. They never update their wardrobe, and they wear that kind of clothes forever. And I thought that was really funny. I think women do a version of that too, but I think men do that more strongly.
I tried lots of different ways of messing with my hair over over my young adulthood, and then ended up basically wearing my hair with the haircut I started getting when I was 4.
That was your best haircut.
The classic almost buzz cut. Just, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
It ain't broke, don't fix it. Exactly.
Abby commented, when my grandparents passed, one thing they asked was that if you had given something to them, you had first right of refusal. This was nice and kept some fights from not happening, as people just knew that it would likely go to the original giver, a particular painting in one case.
Oh, so they offered to give it back, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
And Lorraine said, I have the same hippie hairdo from high school.
Yay. Long, and see, now it's back in fashion. We went
totally
through
works.
when it wasn't, and now it's come back in fashion to have long hair, right? That's so funny.
And Jane, who's with us in Facebook, said, I'm in a city with a third of the population currently evacuated due to a wildfire.
Oh.
As someone else said, a fire really causes you to think about what's important. My car has been loaded with what's most needed in case we need to evacuate. Everything else is replaceable if needed. It's interesting that what matters most to me fits in the car.
Well, and I think that being able to load the car with what's most important and being satisfied that you've done that is the difference between, if you had to evacuate and your house burnt to the ground, you would at least have the comfort of knowing that you made thoughtful decisions before you were in crisis. And a lot of the trauma that comes from fire is people who, they go to work and they come home and their house is burnt down, and they had no chance to pull out the super important, valuable things that were the most important to them. And that's why the fire is so incredibly traumatic, because their whole life got wiped off the planet in a moment. And being able to be thoughtful about what's important to you and to take those things and making sure that they're portable, protectable, you can load them and go in a hurry, is part of what allows you to survive great, sudden, sharp trauma. I think it gives you that little bit of touchstone and lets you walk away with the things that are precious. And I think that helps people cope when they have those kinds of experiences in life. And we all hope that we won't have to deal with that, but you might. We'd like to be able to, something's wrong, I need to grab this box when I race out of the house, and have that box be things that are important.
Several people have asked about eyewear donation, and Karen asked, do you donate the glasses to the supermarket box or where? And I shared a link through the chat to the Eyes for Hope program. Now, that's really kind of geared toward larger collections, but you can frequently find eyewear donation boxes in supermarkets or in, like, at the courtesy counter sometimes, or in optometrist
Yeah,
shops,
yeah, at the eye
eyewear
doctor's
shops.
place.
Eyewear shops and eye doctors' offices often have a collection. The Lions Club, if I'm not mistaken, collects eyewear.
It
Someone
is a
mentioned,
to-do item, but it's, if you're somebody that wears glasses and you just need to get rid of your collection, you only have to do it once, and then, you're starting the next collection.
well,
So,
and if you've only got a couple of pairs, it makes more sense to, stop by a shop that collects them rather
yeah.
than, boxing them up for shipping and all of that.
Yeah. I mean, I make a box just like it would be a box that would sit on a counter at the optometrist, and I fill it up, and then, when I'm done, it's got, 50 pairs in it. But that's like, a year of collection from clients, 2 at a time, 3 at a time. And so I just collect, and when the box is full, then I send it off. And so I collect slower than an optometrist would, but part of why I can fill the box is because of, my client interaction. And so it works for me. And you may not have that many, and there's some other more local solutions to the problem. That's just a very specific, for those of us that wear glasses.
Deborah mentioned for our international audience, there's an organization called Licht im Dunkel for Austria and Germany. That's light in the darkness for old
Oh,
eyewear.
awesome. Thank you for the reference internationally. We appreciate it.
We are running out of time, so let me make a couple of quick announcements, then I'm going to come back to you for a final thought. I want to remind our viewers and listeners who are with us live that we have a YouTube channel with more than 100 videos on lots of organizing topics. You can go to cfhou.com/YouTube, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and click the bell icon next to the subscribe button if you'd like to get notified when we post something new. Thank you again to I have forgotten the name of our newest Patreon patrons, so I'm going to have to shout out to them next week. But if you would like to support us with a small or large, we would take large donations, but small is good, recurring monthly donations, visit cfhou.com/Patreon. Also, the occasional reminder that you can hire Gayle. And if you're in the Houston area, you can hire Gayle to come in person to work with you for an organizing session. But from anywhere in the world, you can hire Gayle to work with you for a virtual organizing session. Visit cfhou.com/virtual for details.
Thank you for the commercial.
You're welcome. How about your final thoughts on this topic?
So dealing with your sentimental clutter is mostly about reducing your existing backlog, but your day-to-day habits continue to affect your future accumulation of sentimental clutter. If you don't adjust your habits of accumulation, you're setting yourself up to build another pile. So I encourage you to take a careful look at how you filter the physical evidence of your experiences as you have them. Are there places in your life where a photo would effectively stand in for a physical memento? Could you pull a representative sample of the materials related to an event right after you live it? What about posting to a Pinterest page to collect memories in a space-saving way? Or consider writing a blog or a journal to memorialize your special moments. Your memories are precious, but so is your present life, and we want you to be able to treasure the past without it crowding you out of living your best life you can right here and right now. That is my final thought.
I want to remind everybody that our next webcast will be on Tuesday, November 3rd at noon Central Time, live in Zoom and streaming on Facebook. And we will have fallen back to standard time. So for our European viewers who missed out or missed us because of the time change, we'll be back in sync at the usual time next week. Our topic, we're going to continue our series on perceptions of value. We're going to talk next week about monetary value. What's the relationship between what things are worth and what we think things are worth? How does the value of things change over time? We'll talk about the sunk cost fallacy and what we call the garage sale conundrum. Tune in next week for that. And speaking of garages,
I wanted to let you guys know we have had several requests over time to have us do a video of us working at a project. And so my friend Karen Baker, who is on the call right now, hi Karen, she jumped in and said that she would be willing for us to videotape in her garage while we work on it. And so we started that yesterday. Actually, we had our first session with Karen and her mother Velma, and we are going to go back again on Wednesday and do some more work. And then when we're videotaping all along, and so we're going to edit together a show that is my experience of working with Karen in her garage, so you guys can see us work. So that
Adventures
is
in the Garage.
Adventures in the Garage. So that is in production right now. We're making it happen right now. So it will appear in the next few weeks.
In the near future.
In the near future.
If you're watching this on YouTube or listening to our podcast, we'd love for you to join us live. To get notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join our meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by going to cfhou.com/Facebook, or join our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We love to hear from you, so please send us your questions, comments, and topic suggestions in YouTube, on Facebook, or anywhere else you find us. And you can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
We are so glad you came to listen to us chat today, and we hope to see you next time. Have a good week. Bye.
Bye-bye.